Today's video is a little bit more serious than normal, so I've put a blue shirt on. But take a listen to this. These extraordinary taxes were caused by Vanguard's conscious decision to benefit ultra-wealthy shareholders over Main Street investors. Firms should be putting retail investors first when making management decisions, and Vanguard failed to do that in this case. I don't think it's unfair to say they were either cavalier or clueless.
Can't we just start over?
That is a damning assessment of Vanguard's conduct from a Mr. William Galvin, Secretary of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. How do you say Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
Who investigated Vanguard off the back of accusations that they intentionally screwed over tens of thousands of American investors in order to benefit their wealthier clients. On the back of that investigation, Vanguard has agreed to a settlement of over $6 million in that state alone. Massachusetts? But that settlement only applies to one state, and these comments are from one man. And with any story, there's always two sides. Today we're going to explore both sides of this and the latest updates on what they mean. Now we're going to do this without any preconception or bias, and we're going to cite a wide range of sources, including court documents, statements from both sides, and my favourite place for a bit of speculation relating to Vanguard, the Bogleheads forum, which is an interesting source of information and not credible in the slightest, but often represents some of the most in-depth discussion about all things Vanguard. Right. Before we start, let me just bring you up to speed.
Mutual funds are tremendously, except for index funds really, tremendously tax inefficient. And the index fund is going to pick up another 1.5 points on tax efficiency.
December 2020. As the world still reels from the impacts of COVID and many face the reality of not being able to see loved ones this Christmas, Vanguard takes the decision to reduce the entry criteria of one of its funds from 100 million all the way down to 5 million. The rumours that circulate on the forum seem to suggest that Vanguard had to do this because Fidelity dropped their fees on a similar product. So to stop people from flooding off Vanguard's platform to a competitor, Vanguard dropped their fees. So, no biggie, right? New cheaper fees for everyone. Merry Christmas, you
filthy animal.
Not quite. You see, Vanguard has two types of customers. Average Joes like you and me, and then institutional investors with significantly more cash to invest. Such is life that those with more cash tend to get a better deal. So Vanguard often have two versions of their funds. One public-facing one, which we get access to, and then the other cheaper version of the fund, which operates behind the scenes. So Vanguard reduces the entry criteria on the cheaper fund from 100 million all the way down to 5 million. And what that means is anyone in the now more expensive fund is incentivized to sell up and move to the cheaper one.
I'd snake the thing for the money, but get my 100K in.
Vanguard's decision caused an elephant stampede from one fund to the other. The impact of this migration was so great that Vanguard were forced to sell assets in Fund 1 to release cash so that people could take that cash and move it to the new cheaper fund. Typically in a year, the fund would sell about 0.48% of its holdings. In December 2020, it's reported as much as 15% of the fund had to be liquidated. For many of the investors in the now more expensive fund, this wasn't an issue because they had their investments inside of tax wrapped accounts, like a Roth IRA, which is similar to the UK ISA structure. But for many investors who weren't in those types of accounts, who were investing inside of general investment accounts that didn't have those tax advantages, they were hit with capital gains tax bills. Significant capital gains tax bills. In one case, it's reported that one individual received a $150,000 bill that he wasn't expecting. This is all because of how capital gains tax is applied in America. This couldn't happen in the UK for anyone that is panicking. Now at this stage, I think it's perfectly reasonable for someone to say, well, you should have just had the assets in a non-taxable account then. This is actually one of the key points of debate in the Bogleheads forum. But please consider this. Vanguard advertises these very funds to customers who open general non-tax wrapped accounts. And the actions taken by Vanguard resulted in a tax bill 40 times higher than anything ever experienced in the fund. This is not typical of the fund. It's not something that investors could have planned for or prepared for. It was a managerial decision that instigated this tax liability for these individuals. There is nothing they could have done about it, and it was unprecedented in the fund's history. So how many people did it affect? In short, loads. It's estimated that in the state of Massachusetts alone, 5,000 investors were given a bill they did not expect. Now where this really doesn't look good for Vanguard is they could have taken steps to avoid this. They could have done things that resulted in the cheaper fees for others without impacting individual investors. They could have merged the funds, or simply they could have just made the fee the same for everyone. They could have given everyone a discount. But they didn't. Well, actually, Damien, they did. The problem was they just took those steps after everyone had already incurred their tax bill. So once everyone had been lumped with these huge bills, they then took the steps they could have taken originally that would have avoided that whole mess. Now, all of this originally broke in March when the news came about that this case was ongoing. But since then, the Wall Street Journal has reported on the recent updates, and that takes us to where we are today. Before we get into this, I think it's important that I just say about 80 to 90% of everything that I have invested is with Vanguard products, both directly with Vanguard on their UK platform and then also with a few other investment brokers, all of which are linked in the description. I love Vanguard's products, and nothing that I've discussed in today's video or will discuss after this has affected that opinion. I will continue to invest in their products, both index funds and ETFs, long term for now. But I also want to make it clear that I've never been paid by Vanguard to make a video about them. I've never received a sponsorship payment. I've also never even received affiliate income for people signing up to their site. The only financial incentive that you could say that I have for making these videos about Vanguard is from Google, who basically pay me ad revenue when people watch them, okay? Okay. I just want to make it really clear that Vanguard don't pay my bills. What actually pays my bills is sponsorships with companies like NordVPN, who are today's sponsor. Shameless segue for you. And if it wasn't bad enough, I'm going to go get my cat now, because nothing washes down a shameful segue like a bit of animal exploitation. Don't look at me like that. He gets a tin of tuna after. Everything's fine. I'll go get him. NordVPN keeps you private and secure online by hiding your IP address and routing your internet traffic through an encrypted connection to a privately owned VPN server. Here he is. So in plain English, Nord will give you an added level of privacy when browsing online. I recently came back from a holiday in Spain, and while I was connected to the hotel internet, while I was on the public Wi-Fi, I had my Nord turned on just to ensure my privacy. It meant I knew my information was secure whilst on the Wi-Fi shared with loads of other people. Is that good? You're into that, aren't you? But it isn't just when you're abroad that you can benefit from the service. You can make it look like you're in a different country, so you can access restricted content on platforms like Netflix. Or you can hide your history, your internet history, from your service provider. So basically, if you've got Sky or BT, they can't see what you're looking at. So check out the link in the description or the pinned comment, or you could always visit www.nordvpn.com/DamienTalksMoney. Clicking the link is well easier than typing that in. And the best thing is it's risk-free, as NordVPN offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So me and Cobweb would like to say thank you, Nord, for sponsoring the channel. Without you, I couldn't do this full-time, and he would fast run out of tuna, wouldn't he? Which would be a crying shame. Now, back to the video. Right, let's talk about why Vanguard did this. If you want to be nice, you could sit there and say, well, Vanguard were reducing fees for customers, and to be fair to Vanguard, they're not tax advisors. So it's within their position to sit back and say, we're not meddling in that. We're not giving out tax advice specific to clients. We're investment brokers, not tax specialists. But this fees argument can just be picked apart by the fact that they didn't reduce the fees for everyone. If that was the main driver, if they wanted to make it cheaper for people, then just do it for everyone, not just some. And the tax point, I do think that's quite valid, really. They're in no position to sit there and offer tax advice. But Vanguard have a duty of care to their investors, not just some of them, all of them. Primum non nocere is a Latin phrase that translates to do no harm. Primum.
For the Latin sere.
Nocere.
Non nocere.
Primum non nocere. Honestly, Damien, you can barely speak bloody English. Why the hell are you scripting Latin into these things? In this instance, it's very much the case that Vanguard did cause harm. Now, while I don't think that Vanguard's intentions were malicious, Massachusetts, I don't think that they're evil, sat there thinking, let's screw everyone over. I certainly think that they made a poor management decision off the back of competitive pressures. They weren't reducing fees out of the goodness of their heart. They did it to stop people leaving at the end of the day. But on the point of leaving, let's say Vanguard did nothing and they didn't reduce their fees. What's to say that a load of investors then wouldn't have sold up and moved to the Fidelity fund that was now cheaper, causing this same set of circumstances anyway, as investors flocked out of one fund to a competitor's. But regardless of all this, you just can't ignore the fact that Vanguard could have just reduced the fees for everyone. We've got to ask ourselves as investors, do we think it's acceptable for a broker to make a decision based on their own bottom line that causes collateral damage like this? Do we think it's okay that they protect their profits at the expense of investors? I don't think it is. Because let's not beat around the bush here. Vanguard operate in a highly regulated space. They couldn't even change the bog roll in the toilets at their head office without someone from compliance checking that over first, I bet. So to imply that they didn't know that this would happen just doesn't seem plausible. They had to have known, surely. Surely they had a team of legal professionals and fund experts looking at this going, if we make these changes, there's going to be a load of people over here that are going to get hit with a tax bill. And they must have just gone, well, do it anyway. If they didn't know, then what's worse, cavalier or clueless? Now that brings us on to the recent news that Vanguard has reached a settlement agreement in the state of Massachusetts. Vanguard will set up a $5.5 million fund there, and there is also $250,000 set aside for admin costs. 250 grand for admin, that is a hell of a lot of pens. Vanguard will also make a one-time payment of $500,000 to the Commonwealth. To me, that basically looks like a fine imposed by the local government that Vanguard have to pay to them. So the people of Massachusetts will be invited to come forward and say, you know, this is how much I got stung because of this mess from Vanguard, and they will be able to claim up to 65% of the amount back. Vanguard released a statement along with this settlement news. We're glad to put this matter behind us and avoid the cost and distraction of a protracted process. Certainly not an apology, that is it, right? There's a lot to unpack here. First of all, there's the whole we're glad we put this behind us. As far as I'm aware, this isn't over. There's still the very real issue of a class action lawsuit that appears to have been filed in Pennsylvania. The decision to settle reflects the outcome for one state and 5,000 investors. If Vanguard have felt the need to pay $6 million in this state, what about all the others? The Vanguard statement is very carefully worded, and I imagine that is intentional, considering they face other further action from other parties. In the first video where we had a chat about this situation, I said that I didn't think Vanguard would want to go to court because basically it's just not a good look. All the headlines that are associated with thousands of investors taking you to court, and yeah, just a messy situation, isn't it? So it probably suits Vanguard to settle if they can. Kind of like Prince Andrew, I guess. Does not want to have to admit guilt or say sorry, gets to walk away without any further embarrassment. Now, I'm not comparing Vanguard to Prince Andrew. Well, I guess I just did, but, you know, one is a massive finance brand, the other is a sweaty. I'll let you decide what word to put in there. Rhymes with
Once.
The saddest thing about this whole situation is the investors who got stung are only getting back 65% of what they paid out. And the local government is getting a cheque for £500,000. Am I missing something, or does it just seem a little bit off to you? The fact that there's a class action lawsuit going on that's looking to represent all of the victims, and Massachusetts just settle before that can be resolved, and they get for £500,000 paid to, you know, the local office. Class action lawsuits represent all victims, so why settle for a 65% rebate when that is ongoing? What is the benefit of that? $500,000. Look, I'm just thinking out loud here, and I'll be the first person to say that I am naive to the American legal system and the motives behind the state of Massachusetts with regards to this settlement. It just seems a little strange to me to accept such a bad deal for the people that were penalised whilst there's a class action lawsuit going on. If there's anyone in the comments that understands this sort of arrangement better than I do, can they please just speak up and I'll pin the comment for everyone to see. It is also worth mentioning that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are also investigating Fidelity, T. Rowe Price Investment Services, American Fund Distributors, and BlackRock, the biggest of them all. So maybe this isn't just a Vanguard issue, or maybe Galvin's asking other fund providers what they think about it all, just to see how they would have handled the situation. Or maybe him and his office just loved the taste of them $500,000 checks. Who knows? Reputations can take ages to build and then be destroyed in an instant. Now, personally, while I don't think this is a big enough scandal to put people off the Vanguard brand, I do think it's going to add fuel to the fire of this conversation that's circulating at the minute that since Jack Bogle stepped away from Vanguard and unfortunately died, Vanguard as a company has gone away from his principles and is veering in a direction that takes it away from the thing that that man built that everyone loved. Let's say Vanguard was worried that a few billion quid was going to leave the platform because a competitor had made a similar fund cheaper. I wonder how many billions are now not going to flow into Vanguard's funds as a result of the headlines circulating around this. This is not over. And until it is, the question will remain of why did Vanguard not just take the simple steps of reducing the fees for all investors? We don't know, but with these recent developments, there's probably a few lessons, a few takeaways that we can walk away with from this current situation. First of all, the administration costs and fines paid to local governments in America are a little bit suspect. And secondly, it doesn't matter where you are in the world and how your tax laws operate, always take advantage of any tax-advantaged accounts like Roth IRAs, ISAs, whatever they are in your country, because that would have ultimately protected all of these investors from any of this mess. Thank you today, guys, for listening to me ramble. I do appreciate it. I'll be back in a few days with a normal meme-filled, jokey video. Just wanted to have a chat about this with you today.
You feel alive, let's hit the dance floor. Don't work too hard, might break a backbone. Return of the Mac, the king is back though. Corvette and cash, I never lack those.